At Totem we are continually being asked to recruit people with a particularly strong industry sector focus, or somebody who will focus on a specific industry sector. Clifton, could you perhaps give a perspective on that?
I think one of the it's a really interesting question, actually, Tim, because I think professional services firms have tended to have lots of hard measures for their sector programs, and they've been introduced at different timescales. I can think of one very large international US law firm that only introduced their sector program this year, which is interesting to see how spread out the introduction of these programs can be. The challenge for professional services firms is that the hard measures are often financial, and they don't necessarily focus on some of the softer measures, which look at that future positioning, that change of perception as to the role that you play.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it is a 2 to 3 year investment program and needs to be run as part of the CAM program, but separate, because it's more marketing focused, it's more profile orientated, and it has to strike at the business issues. And one of the fundamental challenges which law firms face is they focus more on the law and the legal issues rather than the business issues. Actually, understanding those pain points from a client perspective enables you to correctly address the business issues effectively.
I've noticed, and I think this is partly played out in the report, most clients recognise that firms have a sector approach, and a lot of clients recognise they probably sit in a firm's sector group. What a lot of clients were saying was they thought firms could leverage more from their sector strategies. They felt that there were a lot of law firms that had a lot of sector expertise, but that sector expertise was not necessarily feeding out into the marketplace. And that's where firms really have an opportunity to create value for clients, by actually bringing them market insight, telling them what's coming over the horizon, telling them what that might mean for their business. And I think they feel they could get more of that. I think it's also around how law firms manage their performance. And I think a lot of law firms are still focused on managing the performance of practice groups rather than sector groups. And I think they still are making individuals accountable for their performance in relation to their practice area. And it's quite interesting. There are 1 or 2 firms who've actually started to make their sector heads accountable for the performance of their sector.
Right.
And those same firms have also got resource actually based in the sector rather than a practice group.
The Big Four have been doing this for a number of years now, and the challenge is that they're far more used to operating in a matrix culture.
Yes.
And it's a fresher challenge for legal professionals to overcome, I think.
What was interesting in the report, which differed slightly from CAM, was that there's a much greater variance in terms of the sector strategies that firms are adopting. So it goes from highly developed strategies focusing on perhaps 2 or 3 really well-defined sectors where they've got sector heads that are accountable, they've got resources actually aligned to the sector, down to what is little more than an aspirational statement on the website. So huge variance in sector strategies.
And I think clients are becoming increasingly cognizant of that fact.
Think they are.
And they're unpicking it using a number of different search criteria, whether that be Legal 500 and Chambers, whether that be websites, or whether it's actually the referees that are out there. Clients are becoming increasingly adept at that, which is interesting because when combined then with procurement, you're looking at, as your report points out, the increasingly sophisticated nature of the dynamic of how clients choose their suppliers.
Absolutely.
And sector plays a critical role, not just within the FTSE 100 space, FTSE 250, and clearly internationally. And if you haven't got that sector expertise, your conversion ratios are going to go down.
Yes, well, I would totally agree with that. You talk to any client and ask them what their key decision criteria are when they're selecting law firms, either for a transaction or for a panel appointment, and sector expertise is pretty much at the top, I would say.
It's definitely superseded geography. So the days of we're in the same building, are long gone actually, or they are, so rare now. Sector is absolutely critical. If you can't demonstrate sector expertise with comparable clients, with comparable pieces of work, you're not going to have a big relationship.